Okay. So, welcome and thank you for coming to my high holiday workshop, which is about Unetane Tokef, the prayer from Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur. And I'm going to be basically giving an Israeli spin or perspective on it and how we can approach it towards Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur specifically. So I'm on you can put me on speaker view, but I actually like the gallery view so I can see you guys and interact with you as well. If you prefer speaker view, please feel free to put it on speaker view, but we're relatively a small amount of people. So whatever you prefer. And obviously, please make sure to be muted and use the chat whenever you want. So I'm just going to dive right in, and I'm going to share with you two songs. One is actual Unetane Tokef, but it's the prayer itself, so we can read it and actually know what we're talking about. And then I'm going to share with you an Israeli song called Etzlenu Bagan, because I'm going to be showing you a particular performance afterwards that combines these two songs together. So we'll look at the sources first and then go into the specific unique source as well. Okay. Let me open the specific. Okay. Okay. So this is Unetane Tokef. I made it so it would be printed out. So it's a little bit, it's a lot on one page, and I will send it to anybody who registered, so you have that with you. But I would very much appreciate if maybe somebody could read, and it's a long prayer, so maybe just from the first paragraph from we until insignia, then someone else will continue.
We lend power to the holiness of this day, for it is tremendous and awe-filled, and on it your kingship will be exalted, your throne will be established in loving kindness, and you will sit on that throne in truth. It is true that you are the one who judges and reproves, who knows all and bears witness, who inscribes and seals, who reckons and enumerates. You remember all that is forgotten. You open the book of records, and from it all shall be read. In it lies each person's insignia.
Great. Okay. Next paragraph. Somebody willing to read?
I'll do it.
Is that Wayne?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
And with a great shofar is sounded, and a thin silent voice shall be heard. And the angels shall be alarmed, and dread and fear shall seize them as they proclaim, behold, the day of judgment on which the hosts of heaven shall be judged. For they too shall not be judged blameless by you, and all creatures shall parade before you as the herd of sheep. As the shepherd herds his flock, directing his sheep to pass under his staff, so do you shall pass, count and record the souls of all living, and decree a limit to each person's days and inscribe their final judgment.
Thank you. Okay, so in the last paragraph, if somebody could read that.
I'll read it.
Thank you, Diane.
On Rosh Hashana it is inscribed, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. How many shall pass away, and how many shall be born? Who shall live, and who shall die? Who in good time, and who by an untimely death? Who by water, and who by fire? Who by sword, and who by wild beast? Who by famine, and who by thirst? Who by earthquake, and who by plague? Who by strangulation, and who by lapidation? Who shall have rest, and who wander? Who shall be at peace, and who pursued? Who shall be serene, and who tormented? Who shall become impoverished, and who wealthy? Who shall be debased, and who exalted?
Thank you. So this is a very heavy prayer, and that I saw that B'nai, and then according to the new Machzor, it only appears in Rosh Hashana. There are many communities who say in Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur. What are your thoughts about this prayer? Just from the first glance and reading, or the fact that we say it on Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur. Yes, Taibo.
I've always
One second, Bob. Yeah.
the tradition that I thought I remembered, getting older, all those things, was that the final isn't until either one I thought said Hoshana Rabbah, the other Shmini Atzeres. So it made me wonder, obviously, when that other tradition evolved, because maybe the text of this prayer was much earlier than what we say now that you actually have till whether it's Hoshana Rabbah or Shmini Atzeres.
So we say that it's sealed. You say on Yom Kippur, you say, and in Ne'ilah, you actually say chatom, right? You say sealed. But we believe that the final decision actually is on Hoshana Rabbah. So even though you say sealed, we have additional time as well. So you're correct. But thank you for noticing that as well. Bobby, do you want to say something? And then Alan.
Well, I've always been bothered by this prayer because it makes it sound as if we have no free will. It's all decided for us. There's nothing I can do that will change anything. So that's what bothered me.
I will say that the continuation of that prayer says, "Utshuva, utfila, utzdaka, ma'avirin et roa hagzera," which means that repentance, prayer, and
Righteousness.
and no charity, will basically remove or mitigate the negative decree. So meaning that you do have that opportunity or ability to change it, but you realize when you're standing on Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, the awesome moment that you are standing before God and the meaningfulness of it. But I'm interested to hear what Alan and Wayne say as well. So Alan, what are your thoughts? Wait, you need to unmute.
The reason this is said on Rosh Hashanah is because of the original story of how the prayer was introduced into the liturgy of medieval, what's the year? In medieval Jewish practice. The rabbi was brought to the king, as it were, who 3 days asked him to renounce Judaism, and he said he would think about it. Well, he was summoned on Rosh Hashanah, had his hands and feet cut off, and then died on that day. 3 days later, he came to another sage in a dream and was taught this prayer. That's why it's originally said on Rosh Hashanah. And the reference for it, if you want, is the Silverman Machzor on page 359.
Thank you for adding that. It's interesting. I understood that, maybe I found this out somewhere else, that it was found in the Cairo Geniza, and then in the 10th century, and then that's when it became popular, said in prayer books.
Check out Silverman, page 359.
Okay.
See, the new Machzor we use doesn't go through any of this stuff. It just assumes that, well, it's here. So some of its commentaries are great, but some of them lack foundation.
Thank you for adding that, Alan. So Wayne and then Danny, and then we will continue to the next one.
So I was just going to say a couple things. So it's interesting that there are a couple of things in this prayer that would seem kind of outdated and irrelevant, but now we have a plague, and with ISIS we had a sword. So it was always like, okay, why are those things still in here? But now they're relevant. And the other thing, just to say, the reason I said righteousness is because even though tzedakah is charity, that's not the way the prayer book's translated, at least in the States.
Interesting. You see, I don't know that because I'm reading the Hebrew. So for me, tzedakah is charity.
You're right, tzedakah is charity.
Yeah. So it's good to know. Thank you for adding that. And Danny.
Two things. One, a little humorous. Why the hell do we spend the day in Shul on Yom Kippur if everything's going to be decided on Hoshana Rabbah? That's number one. And that only came in with the mystics who I wouldn't buy a used car from. But the other thing, how do you translate ma'avirin?
Ma'avirin for me is pass. So from the way I have always read it and understood it myself, is that you can eliminate the bad decree that you have by doing these things. And when I saw the translation, I saw mitigate. I mean, that means it doesn't disappear, but you're lessening it. So la'avor means to pass. So meaning if you can like remove it or pass it or, eliminate it. So that's how I would translate it, just with the Hebrew word and the meaning of the root. But I'm not a professional translator.
Doesn't that go together, Marine at Roa HaGezerah?
Yeah.
So the severity of the decree, isn't it?
Roa gzera, meaning for me, that because you have a gzera tova, you can also have a good decree, right? If you're reading the book of life, you have a good decree. So you're specifically saying that you can eliminate the bad decree. That's how I mean, that's Netta interpretation and not official translation. So I'm going to take the conversation in a different direction with Unetane Tokef, but I'm really appreciative of hearing all of your opinions and thoughts, and it could develop into a discussion also towards the end of the session as well. So if you have anything that's within you, write it down or write it in the chat, and we can reference it to it later. So I'm going to go to the next song, which is called Etzlenu Bagan. And I'll ask again for someone to read, and maybe from in to blanket, and then we'll do the second half. So I'll just, before we start reading, I'll just say this song was written in 2014 by someone named Yifti, who became a Israeli songwriter. And 2014 was Operation Protective Edge. Now, you won't get the point of the song until the end, but basically it's talking about it's a song that since 2014 has become one of the known songs for Israel's Memorial Day. Okay, so just different context from Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, but we'll get to the song that connects these two songs together. So can somebody read?
I'll read.
Thank you.
In our kindergarten, there are many children. Some of them I like, some I don't know. But who hasn't heard of Ron's courage? He's the fastest in the sandbox. He's the strongest in the kindergarten. But he has one secret he was scared of revealing, that he is so in love with one of the girls. So on cold nights, with a flashlight underneath the blanket, they talk, and he reveals to her what she means to him. His entire world is safe underneath the blanket.
Great. How about you continue just for the next one, and then we'll ask somebody else to read. Rebecca.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. I muted accidentally. I lost my place now. Underneath the blanket. Okay. In our kindergarten, there are many cliques. Some of them are considered prestigious, some less so. But who hasn't heard of the swing jumpers? They are clapped for. They are taught to land. They are praised, the pride of the entire region. Only sometimes when they jump far, they forget to come back.
And then, okay, so then it goes back to the chorus. And then can someone read the second part?
I'll read if you want.
Who said that?
Sue.
Yeah, thank you.
Where does it start? In our kindergarten,
right over
happily?
Here. Yes.
Okay. In our kindergarten, we part happily because the day is not long and we meet again tomorrow, except for those who suddenly don't come back anymore to our kindergarten. I was told they just moved to a different apartment beyond the clouds. So on cold nights with a flashlight underneath the blanket, they talk, and he reveals to her what she means to him. She cries when he offers her to become his entire world. The night before the war. Is there more?
Yeah. Here.
In our battalion, there are many children. Some of them I like, some of them I won't get to know.
So basically, we only meet when we get to the end of the song. We realize that this whole discussion of a kindergarten was basically an analogy to a battalion. You have the people who are, the strongest in the class, and they jump too far, that they they come, and then we part, but then they disappear into an apartment beyond the clouds. So the music also is beautiful. We'll hear it in a second. So this is the song that's connected to Unetane Tokef, and I'll ask you about that connection once we hear the song. But before that, there's going to be in the song someone named Aviv Alush, who's a known Israeli actor, who will say this in Hebrew. So I want to read it beforehand in English because unfortunately I don't have English subtitles to the video, but I still want you to experience it. So this is why I also wanted to read this before. Can somebody read the 4 lines that are over here in the bottom?
I'll do it.
Thank
On
you.
the most quiet day of the year, the skies thundered and the ground shook. The Yom Kippur War left the entire country of Israel shocked. 2,656 casualties, 7,251 injured, 294 in captivity. Thanks to them, the entire country arose from the ashes and won. 48 years have passed since the war took place.
Okay, thank you. So I think now we kind of understand, oh, okay, that's the connection maybe of the song of Yom Kippur, if they're talking about Yom Kippur War. So therefore Israel's Memorial Day, Unetane Tokef, and then they're bringing this together. So there's 2 things that I want to say before we listen to the song. One, I thought of doing a high holiday workshop basically about this since Israel's last Memorial Day. This performance is from Israel's last Memorial Day, and I was so inspired and moved by the performance and that connection of Memorial Day to Yom Kippur and this liturgy specifically, that I decided I wanted to do a session about it, and it worked out that I'm able to do it. The person who's performing the Etzlenu Bagan, the song we just read about the kindergarten, his name is Li Biran, and him, along with Aviv Alush, both play in the HBO show called Valley of Tears, which I will be showing clips from after this. So we're going to connect Yom Kippur War basically to this, but I do want to also let you absorb and hear the song fully and kind of think on your own, what does it mean when you connect this Etzlenu Bagan, talking about kindergarten and about a specific battalion, to Yom Kippur? Okay. Also the other, one moment. The other person who is singing is Shai Avramson, who used to be the former Chazan of the IDF.
Unetane Tokef Kedushat Hayom Ki hu nora ve'ayom Vo tinaseh malchutecha V'yikon bechesed kis'echa.
ביום הכי שקט בשנה, רעמו ארובות השמיים והאדמה רעדה. מלחמת יום הכיפורים הותירה מדינה אלומת קרב. 2,656 הרוגים, שלמה מהפרה וניצחה. 48 שנים כמעט חלפו מאז המלחמה ההיא.
אצלנו בגן יש המון ילדים, את חלקם אני אוהב, את חלקם אני לא מכיר, אבל מי לא שמע על האומץ של רן? הוא הכי מהיר בחול, הוא הכי חזק בגן, אבל יש לו סוד אחד שפחד הוא לגלות, שהוא כל כך מאוהב באחת הילדות.
ובשופר גדול ייתקע, בכל דממה דקה יישמע, ומלאכים יחפזו לחילולי עדה יאחזו,
ומלאכים יחפזו פנס מתחת לשמיכה הם מדברים, והוא מגלה למה היא בשבילו כל עולמו מוגן מתחת לשמיכה.
כמה יעברו וכמה יבלעו, מי יחיה ומי ימות, מי בקיצו ומי לא בקיצו, מי במים ומי באש, מי בחרב ומי בחיה, מי ברעש ומי במגפה, מי ינוח ומי ינוע, מי שקט ומי יתעלף, מי שלב ומי יתייסר.
אז בלילות קרים עם פנס מתחת לשמיכה הם מדברים, והוא מגלה למה היא בשבילו כל עולמו מוגן מתחת לשמיכה.
משול כחרס הנשבר,
כחציר יבש וחציץ נובל,
וכצל עובר, וכענן קלה, וכרוח נושבת,
וכאבק פורח,
וכחלום יעור.
אצלנו בגדוד יש המון ילדים, את חלקם אני אוהב, את חלקם אני לא אכיר.
I'd be happy to hear your thoughts of the performance, of the connection of the two songs before I move to the next thing. I will also note that the soldiers you saw and the individuals were from an organization called Yad B'Yad, which is our bereaved families, basically. So they joined the song. Yes, Danny.
Did you say this has become a popular song?
So the connection of the two songs is a unique performance, but the Etzlenu Bagan, the song for the memorial, yes.
Yes. As a former soldier, must really do something to you, huh?
I also add, as someone who has a brother in combat
I
as
was
well.
going to say your brother, yeah.
Yeah, because I was in the spokesperson's unit. I didn't have much to worry about in my office, but my brother is, now he's in drill period, so he's fine. But when in May, when he was, told that he has to do a special training on Shabbat because of what's going on, that's scary. So, yeah. Rebecca, do you want to add something?
I thought it was very moving. It's hard for me because my Hebrew is not good enough to know like what they're saying, but I'm glad you did the explanation of both of the songs beforehand, and the imagery I thought was really powerful as well.
Thank you. Any thoughts about, also, I thought when on Memorial Day itself, when I saw that they chose to connect, Yom Kippur to Memorial Day, how powerful that is, and what are your thoughts? I mean, is that something, we stand there on Rosh Hashana Yom Kippur thinking about ourselves, but someone who's in the IDF or in any army is a little bit in a different situation. Is that something that gives you a different perspective, or Tybal?
But on Rosh Hashana, on Yom Kippur, even more so, I don't think we're just supposed to think about ourselves. That's why we recite all the al-chaitz for things that we know we didn't do, because it's supposed to be communal. So that to me is the connection, because it still goes back to it starting in May. That just there, I'm sputtering a little because I don't know if it feels that way to you, but for me in May, not just the weapons, but then the war on social media, it felt as if Israel was in an existential crisis from being attacked in both those ways, which at different points, maybe individuals, actually my only child during 2014 was in Israel, which is why I think about Iron Dome with such gratitude where he was. But this past May felt different than 2014. It felt riskier.
Because of it wasn't just physical.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else wanna say something, add something? Okay, so from this point, I'm going to take a step forward. And I think, we're listening to the song and there's an obvious connection, in the Yom Kippur War, people, it's on Yom Kippur and they're saying this song and they're thinking about who is going to die in war and sword, and they're saying those things, right? So there's a very obvious connection when we say Yom Kippur War specifically. Now, I'm going to take it a step further and kind of give us a different perspective to think about when we come to Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur using the specific situation of the Yom Kippur War. And to help me with sharing this story, I'm going to be showing about 10 clips that are about 10 minutes long. I'm going to be showing different clips from only the first episode of the HBO Valley of Tears. I will be honest, I haven't seen the whole show yet. I've seen like the first 4 or 5 episodes. I have to see it during the daytime. I'm very specific about how it's an amazing show. I highly recommend it. And
is there any way to get it without HBO?
I don't know. Maybe if you know how to download illegally, but I don't know. Sorry. Hi, Rebecca. I hope you're okay. But I have to say that I got it from HBO, but yes. I will note that this is the first season. There's going to be a second one. This first season takes place in the northern border of Syria, and the second season will be taking place on the Sinai border. So that's the focus we have here. Okay, so I'll be disappearing now for 10 minutes, and I'll be showing you different clips.
זה היה סוף הקיץ, 1973. האמת, שהיינו באופוריה, בטוחים שאנחנו בלתי מנוצחים. רק 6 שנים קודם לכן, ישראל עשתה את הלא יאמן. הביסה בתוך 6 ימים את צבאות מצרים, סוריה וירדן. צה"ל כבש את מדבר סיני, את עזה, יהודה ושומרון, את העיר העתיקה בירושלים, את רמת הגולן והחרמון הסורי. הרגשנו אימפריה. נס. מדינות ערב קראו לזה התבוסה, ותחושה עמוקה של השפלה נצרבה בהם. המצרים ביקשו לפתוח במשא ומתן. הם הציעו שלום בתמורה להחזרת סיני. ישראל לא האמינה. ענתה שהיא צריכה את השטח כדי ליצור אזור חיץ, כדי להרחיק אויבים שמבקשים לחסלה. בירושלים צמחה בינתיים תנועת מחאה, שנאבקה להביא לקיצם 3 עשורים של קיפוח ואפליה. הם קראו לעצמם הפנתרים השחורים, בהשראת האם, באמריקה. הם סחפו את ישראל בגל של הפגנות וזעם. היינו רגע לפני בחירות, ובפעם הראשונה הן היו אמורות להיות בחירות על צדק חברתי. אבל סוריה ומצרים לא התכוונו לוותר על האדמה. הן בנו צבאות חזקים, בסיוע סובייטי, שיעמדו מול צה"ל שנהנה מסיוע אמריקני. הן ירחו להחזיר לעצמן את רמת הגולן ואת מדבר סיני, בכל מחיר, גם במלחמה. היינו צריכים להרגיש שזה מתקרב. שמחנו על המנהיגים שלנו. טעינו.
תעצור, אתה לא יכול לעזוב.
סליחה, מפקד. איך קוראים לך?
אבינועם.
אבינועם. אם אתה יודע משהו, פשוט תגיד.
אני לא יכול לספר לך, אין לך סיווג סודי, וגם ככה אני כבר אמרתי יותר מדי.
טוב, שיהיה צום קל.
רגע, יואב. הולכת. לפרוץ מלחמה.
חזור שנית.
הולכת לפרוץ מלחמה, אתה לא יכול לעזוב את המוצב הזה.
אז למה שנדורי לא פה? איפה הוא?
שנדורי לא מאמין לי, אבל אתה חייב להאמין.
המפקד שלך לא מאמין לך ואתה מצפה שאני אאמין לך?
הרוסים מפנים משפחות לשדה תעופה. זה סימן 32 בחוברת, סימנים מעידים למלחמה, וגם הסורים הודיעו לחקלאים לא להגיע לשדות שיש ליד הגבול. אתה חייב להגן עלינו, אתה חייב להישאר כאן.
חכה רגע. שבת, חכו לי כמה דקות.
לא, חביבי, אני
כמה דקות אני חוזר. חבר, תכניס לי את זה רגע. סתם משהו קטן. גידי, צריך לבדוק איזה משהו. אתה אחד? כן, כרגע. טוקיו מסיציליה. תעבירי לי את מבריג עבור.
הוא לא כאן, כולם בארוחת צהריים, עבור.
האם ידוע לך על איזה התפתחות אצלנו בגזרה?
אבינועם, מה אתה עושה פה?
שום דבר, את בטוחה?
שום דבר, מה שום דבר? היא לא מבינה, זה לא הגיוני.
מאוד חמור מה שאתה עושה עכשיו.
תגיד לי מה, אתה מטומטם? מה זה נראה לך פה משחק? שדורי, החייל שלך רץ אליי עכשיו, הוא אומר לי שעומד לפרוץ מלחמה.
אני מצטער, יש לו הרבה בעיות זה.
מה זה הדבר הזה? יאללה חברים, הפעם באמת גמר חתימה טובה. ביי.
כלל שחרור, לא חופש, חופש זכורי, תחרו.
עדנו לפניך אחר.
تحرير انت لاك استقلال شيخور לא חופש, חופש זכורי, תחרו מן.
انت جاي علمني عربي؟ ميلاد كود تحرير، كود تحرير.
אין.
רגע, גם אצלי שואלים תחריר.
תחריר?
מה זה תחריר?
גם אצלי תחריר. מישהו יודע מה זה? תחריר.
עוד פעם, מה זה תחריר?
תחריר בטח שם של מבצע.
תחזירו את האוזניות, כולם להקשיב. אתם שומעים תחריר? מה?
אחד כאן חרדל, קבל, כוננות ליום קרב, ארוך.
חרדל כאן אחד קיבלתי. טוב, יש כוננות ליום קרב, תדאג שהם יאכלו כספי.
בנות! היי, בנות לכאן! סוף סוף ברגע שכולנו חיכינו לו, כוננות ליום קרב. יש הזדמנות אולי להוריד איזה טנק אחד סורי, פחות או שניים. גוטרמן, תעזור לי, יש שם 2 ארגזי אוכל מוחבאים בעמדת מ"מ, תביא לי אותם בבקשה, שוברים את הצום.
כספי, מה קרה?
אני מצטער חבר'ה, צריכים לשבור את הצום, זה הנוהל.
אני מעדיף לחכות שזה יהיה יום קרב ולא התראה.
אף אחד לא שואל אותך מה אתה מעדיף או לא מעדיף. יש לנו אישור של הרב הצבאי.
יום קרב זה פיקוח נפש?
אין לי מושג. יאללה, לאכול. הופ, לתפוס. יאללה, סוכר.
בוא'נה, אני לא שברתי צום מכיתה ה', מה?
גם לא היית בצבא בכיתה ה', נכון?
נכון.
מלפפון?
טוב, תביא את הפור.
יאללה, לאכול, אני רוצה לראות לך לועס. לועס. גם ביחד. ללעוס. 1, 2, 3, שיתוף שליות ובחלים. יפה מאוד פיצי, אני גאה בך. ללעוס אבל, בביסים מהירים, אין לנו זמן.
יודעים, פיצי, נו.
יש לי שיחה מבחר, מר ג'רואי למפחה.
ממי?
הוא אומר 3 חרגולים של ז'וז'ו בדרך אל הקלעה. מה זה?
קלעה זה מצודה.
אני יודע מה התרגום, אבל מה זה 3 חרגולים של ז'וז'ו?
אחמד אל שושו. אחמד רפאל שושו, בוגר אקדמיה צבאית עד 61, יליד חלב ישראלי אבתיסאם. מפקד גדוד קומנדו 82, גדוד 82 בחודשים מתאמנים בלהתקיע על כיבוש שער. הם מתאמנים פה סרן. קאלה. מצודת אנחנו הם באים לכאן. 3 מסוקים של קומנדו סורי הנחתו כאן, המי 8 שהם נושא 22 לוחמים. 3 מסוקים זה 66 חיילי קומנדו סורי. הם באים לכאן, אנחנו המצודה שהם הולכים לכבוש. תכניר, זאת פקודת המלחמה שלהם. מי קצין אבטחת תורן?
יואב.
אבל יצא הביתה.
פספס את ההסעה.
איפה הוא?
בחוץ.
עוד פעם אתה? טוס לי מהעיניים.
התחילה מלחמה.
טוס לי מהעיניים, טוס.
הקומנדו הסורי בדרך אלינו.
תקשיב טוב, אם אתה לא עף לי מהעיניים עכשיו, אני לא יודע מה נעשה לך. תעוף מפה, אני אפרק אותך.
3 מסוקי מ-8, זאת יריית הפתיחה שלהם. 270,000 חיילים סורים, על 1,600 טנקים עושים מדרכם כרגע לתוך מדינת ישראל, עם 960 כלי ארטילריה ו-354 בית הסקר.
עוף לי מהעיניים!
אתה יודע כמה טנקים יש כאן לצה"ל? 177. 177 מול 1,600 שיש להם.
תעלה ויואן קרויף עכשיו פה בדרך בש"ג, לבוא להשלים לי מניין. טוס.
You were all seeing that, right?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I didn't have the stop share on the top. Okay, so I know, very shocking if you've not seen it before and everything. And I'd be happy to hear your thoughts in a moment. I just want to read once again the stats that were mentioned during the song. So I'll go back to the source sheet very briefly. Here we go. Can someone read the 4 sentences again?
I'll do it. I did it before.
Okay, thank you.
On the most quiet day of the year, the skies thundered and the ground shook. The Yom Kippur War left the entire country of Israel shocked. 2,656 casualties, 7,251 injured, 294 in captivity. Thanks to them, the entire country arose from the ashes and won. 48 years have passed since the war took place.
Thank you.
Do you know offhand what the population of Israel was back then?
Oh no, I don't. I don't know at the top of on top of my head. But if someone wants to Google it very quickly, so we can all know, that would be great. Because in the meantime, I'm going to continue with just some information. But thank you for the question. I can verify afterwards. Here, population. Okay. So what I appreciate about that first episode of that show is that it so clearly shows, through, this fictitious, one individual person. Here, Susan just shared there were 3.278 million in Israel at that time.
That's it? Wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge percentage of the population then too.
Yeah. So the episode really shows how unprepared or unaware they were for the war. So yes, at the end of the day, they managed to succeed and won, and there wasn't, yes, there were casualties and people who were injured and everything, but the major issue was the fact that they had the intelligence information and they weren't prepared. And just want to share just a few things that happened as a result afterwards. So there was an investigative committee called the Agranat Committee afterwards that basically they're trying to point fingers at whose fault was it that they did not know about the war in advance. And they had blamed, according to this investigation, the military mostly. They blamed the chief of staff, the head of the Southern Command, because most of the war happened in the south on the Sinai front, because Egypt was their main enemy at that time, and the general who's in charge of the intelligence unit, clearly, who he basically, had this information and was receiving it, but did not pass it on. However, the public was very mad that this investigative committee did not blame the prime minister or the defense minister and their decisions as well, meaning that they supposedly received the information and they can also see what's happening on the ground, and also they did not take any responsibility themselves. There were elections immediately after the war, and Golda Meir was voted for again, but due to public pressure, she resigned in November 1973. And it was because of the pressure from the Yom Kippur War and the blame that the public gave her for the war. Moshe Dayan, who was a very known, military figure in Israel, he even appears in my Israeli version of that famous Beatles photo. So someone who's a very, iconic person in Israel, he was not appointed a minister again, which was a big deal. He did not resign, but there was also a lot of public pressure upon him as well. And I will know that even though Golda Meir won the elections right after the war, in 1977, there was the elections were called the upheaval, because ever since the beginning of Israel's foundation, you had the Labor Party and left-wing parties in power up until 1977. So we saw in the beginning of that episode a little bit of the Black Panthers, and had the whole idea of Mizrahim and everything, the social situation, as well as the deep disappointment of the public towards the people in charge, kind of brought the change that Begin was voted for in 1977 and brought this new wave that the right wing became more in power in Israel. So I just want to point out, we had the Yom Kippur War, and, supposedly, if you look at short term or the results of the war, technically, Israel did okay. But there are many things that happened in the aftermath that came as a result of not being prepared. So before I get to my conclusions regarding, Yom Kippur for us and or Unetane Tokef, I'd just like to hear also your thoughts of the show, of, what are you thinking right now? The clips generally, anything that comes to mind before I conclude. Yes, Wayne.
Well, first of all, this was that war was the beginning of my Israel consciousness, because I walked into synagogue on Yom Kippur, and my rabbi, who was very, very dynamic, very strong motivational speaker. That's exactly what he was talking about, and that kind of woke me up to Israel. I didn't have that before, for whatever reason. And then the second thing is, if you ever watch a movie about Pearl Harbor, that is exactly what happened with the United States. There were people telling their superiors, "We're seeing these things," and everyone was dismissing as, no one's going to attack us. We're in panic. No one can defeat us. No one can attack Pearl Harbor, etc., etc. And they ignored all the signs.
Thank you for adding that. And thank you for sharing. Yeah. Danny, and then Alan. Oh, and then Linda.
I was in Israel in Shul on Yom Kippur on Chernichovsky Street, and then there's a shul, and during the break I was back facing the valley, Emek Hamatzleva.
Yes.
And you could see these rows and rows of military trucks going there.
Yeah.
And a couple of soldiers showing up in shul. Nobody knew what was going on. The first time I was actually in a bomb shelter, first days of Sukkot. I mean, for Israelis, a bomb shelter is nothing new, but a little bit spooky. But it's hard to describe what it is. Well, it goes back to the whole thing. How does a mother give birth to a boy in Israel?
Carefully.
Knowing that they have to, because when I was 18 years old, my mother and I packed up the station wagon. She drove me to New York, dropped me off, and I'm going to college. And you guys have it differently. I can never shake that out of my head. I'm sorry, I've just wandered, but okay.
Thank you, Danny. No, I appreciate your sharing your thoughts and adding that. Alan and then Linda.
I think this shows what happens when you become complacent. Doesn't make a difference the countries or the time. If you think you're all powerful and you become complacent, someone's going to be nipping at your heels, and that's what happened in both Pearl Harbor and here.
Thank you. I agree, and I'm gonna use what you said very soon. Linda.
In August of 1973, I was 18 years old and I made Aliyah.
Oh, wow.
So I was there during the Yom Kippur War. And I guess I've read all the books about it. I haven't seen this movie, The Valley of the Tears, but, we know that all this information was coming through and I don't know if it wasn't being taken seriously. I know that they didn't want to disrupt the country on Yom Kippur and all that. But that bit in the movie of this young Chayal hearing it all and nobody listening, I never really thought about it that way. And it's just shocking.
Obviously, I don't know exactly how it worked. They made up the
Right.
story in order to kind of bring it across that the information is being brought to the relevant people, but it's not being taken seriously. Like there's no actual, they weren't in, they didn't have extra force, during the holiday because of hearing this. They actually had less people on the base, right? So, yeah. But yeah, you get that interesting perspective of what actually happens on the base and what that relationship is.
Yeah. I was in services on Har Tzofim that day, and I took a break and I was walking outside. I don't know the name of the cemetery there on Har Tzofim. I was walking there and I saw the military vehicles and the siren went off. And it's like nothing I've ever experienced since. And just living in Israel through that time has affected my life.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing.
Speaking of sirens going off, when I was a kid, at 10:30 on Tuesday morning, all the air raid sirens always went off just because they were testing them. And we can never figure out, wouldn't that be a perfect time to attack? Doesn't anyone think of maybe varying the times or anything? But no, it's the same thing. You get complacent.
Thank you. I'm gonna wait, Tybal and then
As much as I hold Alan in such reverence, I now I should do gallery to see his face. I do want to I think maybe he'll accept a distinction, because complacency when you're America and your neighbors on the border are Canada, Canada is going to attack us. Mexico, same thing, versus the neighborhood. I'm not saying there wasn't complacent, but I think there still is this sense of always uncertainty because the neighborhood differs.
You're saying it's even a bigger deal in Israel because you know that your neighbors are enemies.
Right. So even though you think, okay, we've got all the weapons, we're in good shape, but you know that there's active planning against you, then in America, I mean, understand Japan that in Pearl Harbor wasn't the neighbor, but the geography and the size in the neighborhood of America, I think just makes it so different.
Yeah. Thank you for adding that. And Danny, you'll be the last one before I just summarize, and then I'll hear more.
Yeah, but I forget the word. Is it the Tza'adah or the Mitz'ad, the big march?
Mitz'ad.
Mitz'ad. It was like in July or August, I was there, and everybody was in such a tremendous mood. Why don't you tell the people more about what it is? It's thousands of people marching from God knows where.
I don't know what you're talking about, though.
You've never seen the big march?
When? What is this big march?
During the summer. It's.
You mean the Jerusalem Day March?
No, it's every summer that people would march from, I don't know, Tel Aviv, Beersheba, and so forth, groups, youth groups, individuals, 85-year-old people, and so forth. It's a giant celebration. Everybody is so up because it's the vigor of the country, and they just kept, there were reviewing stands, with dignitaries there and the little people over here, but I have pictures.
What would they do? It would be in honor of what, though?
Nothing, it's just the big hike. That's all.
I don't know. Maybe they don't do it anymore. I don't know. I've never heard of this.
Oh, well, I'll send you pictures.
I'd be happy to see it. I'm fascinated now.
How old are you?
I'm 25.
You can't ask a woman that question.
I know. I will say that no matter what. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I was born in 96, and I moved in 2004. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I will summarize, and then I'm happy to hear more of your thoughts regarding this whole connection. So when I connected kind of the show, and specifically, Yom Kippur War, and thinking of that, and also thinking about how they connected Unetane Tokef to Yom Kippur War specifically, it gave me this additional level of thinking about, Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur, that we have an obligation right now that we're standing before, half a week before Rosh Hashana, but a week and a half before Yom Kippur, to prepare ourselves. And whatever that means, for you to think about that we're standing and we're going to be written and sealed in the books of life, livelihood, redemption, and I think forgiveness. And to think about what that means for us. What do we want to repent in ourselves? What do we want to focus on in our prayers? What are we hoping for the upcoming year? What do we want to improve in who we are as people? We have the obligation to come prepared for these high holidays, because as we saw through the Yom Kippur War, obviously it's a little bit different scale, but when you don't come prepared, you have long-term devastating results, even if in the short term you win, right? And we can't even know what those are. So I just think it gives us a much more powerful perspective to come to into these high holidays, and in addition, kind of give us, a different way of thinking. Sometimes we just come and we, hear Kol Nidre, or we're hearing Neila, we're hearing the shofar. We know that will prepare us and put us in the mood, but it's, making us think in advance and saying us, no, you actually need to do the work beforehand. So that's the conclusion I wanted to reach together with you, using Unetane Tokef, using that unique song that connects clearly between Yom Kippur War specifically and Yom Kippur. And then finally, those clips that give us very much visually how being prepared is so essential. So I'd be happy to hear any questions or additional thoughts that you have, if there's any other conclusions that we can learn and, to go to Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur with. I'd be very much happy to hear.
This is Wayne, just back on the complacency thing. So I believe it was 2007, after that Lebanon war, I volunteered in Sfat, and initially what they had us doing was painting bomb shelters, and then a group from Pikuda Orif showed up, and because my Hebrew was good enough, I got to work with them. And so they had us repairing bomb shelters, and also going door to door in Sfat to ask people what the situation was during the war. And a lot of people told us that they couldn't get into the bomb shelter because the communities they lived in, they started using bomb shelters in their buildings as just storage, as if there was never any possibility they would ever need it for a war. And so that happened pretty quickly. And obviously now it's known that they might need those, but still, Certainly in the north, there aren't rockets fired very often, even though we know that Hezbollah has well over 100,000 rockets. So it's
They're much more prepared in the south and probably the coast now than in the north for sure.
Right.
But I will say that following Protective Edge, they were saying that people were feeling tunnels being dug under them. So there is always this feeling that the enemy is around us. But you are correct that sometimes we need additional wake up calls that even furthermore prove that point about being prepared. Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions? Yes, Danny.
Personally, what does the shofar do for you? Doesn't do anything for me, other than bring back childhood memories of hearing it. But the relationship between hearing a shofar and doing tshuva, I don't mean to be a cynic, but I'm curious, what does it move you?
What do you mean, the show?
No, the shofar.
Personally, yes. I mean, that's the moment that I kind of really think of. I don't know. I find it very inspiring to hear the shofar, and especially when you're able to hear all 100 blasts, it gives me the opportunity to think of, like Kaibo said. I mean, I think personally of me and my family, me and my community, and me and the world, and I always kind of have that separately that I think about.
Okay.
So that's how I kind of focus personally with shofar.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. And Rebecca, I saw your question. I don't know if it was just to me. Oh, yeah. I will send to anybody who registered also the recording, but also the source sheet as well as referencing what we saw today in the clip. So you can also have that as reference if you want to hear it before Yom Kippur, after, whatever you want.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I wish you a Shana Tova and Gmar Chatima Tova. So we may have a good writing and sealing, and that we had the opportunity to now prepare ourselves and also see the fruitful results afterwards as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.